The blood kiss of a vampire is not to be taken lightly, and not all who receive it are strong enough to bind it to them. The wild curse breaks the shackles of its weak wearer's mind, transforming its body into an abomination of fearsome potency. A Vargskyr. Greetings, ladies and laddies, and welcome back to the realms of a cursed city. In today's episode of our speed painting series, we'll dare to paint the mighty Vargskyr, the largest model of the Cursed City box set. This beast is the personification of raw vampiric strength, and I'm really excited to paint it, for it has a lot of very interesting features to offer. Taking out the big guns this time, as my usual painting handle had no chance in hell to hold it. Let's get going! First things first, we'll start off with its fur. For this, we use a saturated beige as the first base coat. Apply it in swift motions with a big brush, but try to avoid the rest of the body. After that first layer is dry, we take a slightly paler beige and paint it over the bright beige, but this time we leave a little space to the fur's outskirts, leaving that part of the former color untouched. We then repeat this step using a pale brown and then a very dark grey, always moving a little further toward the center of the tufts of hair, leaving plenty of the former color still visible. After achieving this lovely gradient of colors, we take a big brush and quickly dry brush light beige over the fur, catching all of their single strands of hair. We repeat this step with a white paint over the darkest parts, like the upper back and the very tip of its tail. As you can see, these steps are all quite messy and not fully controllable, which is why we take care of them at the start, where you don't have to worry about anything else. Now that we have taken care of the highlights, we should continue with establishing the shadow. Get your brown wash out and quite heavily wash the fur with it. If you want to have it a little darker, you may use a black wash instead, but that could possibly knock down the highlights by too much. Okay, the fur is all done, so we can move on to his wings, or better, his wannabe wings, as I really doubt that they could carry him. Ha! Just like a penguin! A 9-foot tall, bloodthirsty penguin. We base the big membranes on his arms with a rosy terracotta, and the wings on his back with a dark red. After that, we take our washes out again and give these areas a quick shading. Coming to the dry brush, I used a bright skin color first, and after that a pure white for the highlight. For the wings on his back, we can just take the same terracotta color we used as the base layer for the big wings. Alright, now it's time to get a little funky. As we're staying quite close to the original color scheme by Games Workshop, we take a dark burgundy and paint the feet and the hands with it. Don't get too high with it, and make sure to paint the toes and fingers darker towards the claws. Okay, having all of the messy parts out of the way, we mix grey, a light beige and white together to get a dark yellow tinted white for the pale skin. Painting this onto the mostly unstained white primer should be relatively easy. Just try your best to not touch any of the already painted areas apart from maybe the connections to his feet and hands, and you should be good to go. After that's all dry, we take a black wash and lightly wash the skin with it, to quickly pick out all of its folds and to give her a really grim appearance. This step can be actually quite difficult, as the wash could easily create tite marks where it dried too early. Make sure to be swift when doing this, and always keep brushing to prevent it from settling down where you don't want it to be, or where it pools too heavily. I decided to give the feet and hands a red wash, but that's totally up to you. Alright, before we can continue on the details, we have to wait for the wash to dry. During this time, we can already take care of the big base, as we usually do in this series. We start by laying the foundation with the texture paint Stirland Mud, and give that 2 dry brushes with lighter beiges. After that we take care of the other elements like the ruined parts, the red, and of course the cobblestones. The washes on the Vargskyr should be dry by now, so we are good to turn our attention to the last details. Before painting her face, we paint the many claws in a smooth pitch black. For her eyes, we start off with a dark red, painting it quite sloppy on the inside of her eye sockets. Then we take a brighter red and pick out the eyeball itself. Because I want them to be really hate and spiteful, we then apply a bright orange before finishing it off with a yellow dot in the middle. Now we just have to paint the fangs in a bright white, and finish off the base with a smooth black trim, before calling the speed paint officially done. Now that is a menacing looking beast. I really had a lot of fun painting it, even though it took a surprisingly long time to put it together, as the drying times in between many steps really slowed us down here. I'm really happy how grim and spiteful she looks, especially with those gleaming eyes, and I think that we could absolutely justify calling it a day at this point. But as always in this series, I want to spend a little bit of extra time on this beast, and show you guys how we can even further upgrade this already awesome looking mini. The first thing I want to do is to get the skin back to its original brightness. For this we have to mix a brighter version of the color that we used for the base, but if you like your Vargskyr as dark as it is now, I won't blame you. You can apply the paint quite thin, as we don't want it to build up and become too bright. When doing this, we want to be careful around the folds and individual muscles, trying to still leave plenty of darkness in the recesses, especially when picking out all of her facial features again. Moving on to the highlights, we take a bright pink and pick out all of the raised bits on her feet and hands, but switch to a rosy beige as we move further upwards. Also, we use this beige for the palms and inside of her hands in general. To give her big claws a little more pep, we take a dark blue tinted grey and paint the upward facing edges with it. Now for something quite intricate. Get a little bit of red wash on your brush and carefully fill in the scar across her face, and if you really want to know it, you can use it to very lightly pick out the finely casted swollen arteries on her throat. We're basically finished with the Vargskyr itself, but I think we should give the base elements some more love. I won't go into much detail for the red at this point, but if you would really like to know on how to approach it, I'd strongly recommend my Corpse Swarm speed paint. Whew, those last steps really had it in them, but I think that they were absolutely worth every second. I think the Vargskyr looks absolutely amazing, ready to rip through the defenders of Ulthuan with bloody carnage, and I really hope you guys had as much fun watching this video as I had painting the mini. In case you're following me along in this series with your own miniatures at home, you will have 35 of the 60 Cursed City miniatures finished by now. And as always, I have a guide listing the exact paints I used for this paint job down in the description of the video. If you have any questions, maybe a couple of suggestions, please be my guest and share them in the comment section. In the next episode of our speed painting series, we will see how it looks like when the raw vampiric strength gets bestowed on individuals with exceptional willpower, and paint the 3 Vargskyr Bloddborn. And if you would like to see their paint job, as well as the other upcoming Cursed City miniatures, feel free to hit the subscribe button. As I am very looking forward to seeing you again in my next video. Until then, take care.